A very good morning, dear students. Today we will deal with the next essay in your course, that is on the ignorance of the learned. By whom? By William Hazlitt. Now, William Hazlitt has written a book on essays, that is Table Talk, Essays on Men and Manners, from which this essay has been taken. Okay, तो आपको क्या ध्यान रखना है that this is the book from which this essay on the ignorance of the learned has been taken. Now, if we talk of William Hazlitt, of course, a 17th century writer. He wrote generally essays. He was popularly known for Charles Lamb and William Hazlitt, two great essayists they were. Now, these are certain features of his essays. There was spontaneity in his essays. That is, they were very spontaneous. There was spur in whatever he wrote or whatever he talked about. Then informality. Informal, what is being informal? You are not being very formal. You are not sticking to various rules and regulations of writing. Then his essays generally have an emotional tone. Emotional tone, say for example, this particular essay is a satirical essay where he is attacking bookish knowledge and he extols. What extol hota hai? Praise karna, honor karna. He extols common sense. So this sounds very interesting, a learned person, a writer, an essayist is attacking what? He is attacking bookish knowledge and he is praising common sense. How he does that? Let us see in the essay. Now, I said you that his essay is satirical. What is satirical? A work which is जिसकी इंटेंशन होती है किसी चीज को रिडिक्यूल करना. रिडिक्यूल करना क्या होता है? उसकी जो कमी है, उसकी जो खामियां हैं वो सामने लाना. ओके, दैट इज व्हाट इज टू रिडिक्यूल समथिंग और दैट इज व्हाट टू सैटराइज समथिंग. सैटरिकल एसे. अब यहाँ पे ये क्या सैटराइज कर रहे हैं? नॉलेज को सैटराइज कर रहे हैं. किस तरह की नॉलेज? बुकिश नॉलेज. ओके, एंड इफ यू सी दिस, it starts like this. In your books on the ignorance of the learned, here is about the author. You can go through this. Of course, sorry, I told you 17th century, but 18th century के prominent writer हैं ये romantic age के. Okay, 17th century से क्या related है? ये epigram. This epigram ऐसे start होने से पहले there is this epigram by Samuel Butler. Samuel Butler 17th century के writer हैं. Okay. एंड एपीग्राम जनरली क्या होता है? ये जो ये दिस पोर्शन इज ना, दिस इज एन एपीग्राम. एपीग्राम इज जनरली अ रिमार्क. उन्होंने एक पोएम ही उठा ली है. अ रिमार्क ऑन व्हाट? अ रिमार्क ऑन एक्सप्रेसिंग आइडियाज ऑफ पीपल, विच आर इन एन अम्यूजिंग एंड क्लेवर वे. मतलब आप किसी इंसान की कमियां, उसकी खामियां या उसकी बुराइयां आप सामने ला रहे हो, बट एक बहुत अच्छे तरीके से. अब ये एपीग्राम भी जो कि पोएम है, किन्होंने लिखी है? विलियम बटलर ने, ऑन द इग्नोरेंस ऑफ द लर्नेड. थ्रू दिस पोएम और थ्रू दिस एपीग्राम बोलेंगे हम, ही इज सेटिंग दिस टोन ऑफ द एसे. Okay, remember this thing. Why he has given this epigram? ये epigram का significance क्या है? तो मैं epigram नहीं पढ़ूंगी. I will straight away start with the essay. The description of persons who have fewest ideas of all others are mere authors and readers. It is better to be able neither to read nor write than to be able to do nothing else. So he says it is not important to just read and write. A lounger, somebody who is relaxing in a sofa, who is ordinarily seen with the book in his hand, is equally without the power or inclination to attend either to what passes around him or in his mind. So person जो hooked up है अपनी बुक के साथ कहीं बैठ के पढ़ रहा है, he is unaware of whatever is going around him. Such a one may be said to carry his understanding about with him in his pocket. तो उनकी जो understanding है, उनकी जो knowledge है, वो it is not in the brain. वो कहाँ है? It is in their pocket. or to leave it at home on his library shelves. अब बेसिकली क्या है, वो एक व्यंग्य के तौर पे, सटायर के तौर पे, व्यंग्य के तौर पे वो उन लोगों की बात कर रहे हैं जो बुकिश नॉलेज में बिलीव रखते हैं, ये जो बहुत ज्यादा बुक्स में हैं. और थ्रू दिस एसे Hazlitt will try to tell you that how people who belong to rural life or people who have more common sense are better learned than the people who have bookish knowledge. उनका अपना कोई परव्यू नहीं रह जाता. They believe in whatever they have read in the books. Very interesting. अगर आप थोड़ा सा इसको समझने की कोशिश करोगे, otherwise लगता है कि what he is doing, but it is very interesting. He is afraid of venturing on any train of reasoning. सोचने की कोशिश नहीं करता है ऐसा इंसान, because he believes only in what? Only in reading books. Or of striking out any observation that is not mechanically suggested to him by passing his eyes over certain legible characters. Shrinks from fatigue of thought. Fatigue होता है tiredness. Fatigue of thought. He won't think something of his own because he's already tired of reading of the thoughts that have come to his mind from the books, which for want of practice becomes unsupportable to him, and sits down contented with an endless wearisome succession of words and half-formed images which fill the void of the mind. Void क्या होता है? Emptiness. And continually efface one another. Learning is, in too many cases, but a foil to common sense. Now this is very important. Learning, he says, is a foil to common sense and a substitute for true knowledge. Books are less often made use of as spectacles to look at nature with than as blinds to keep out its strong light and shifting scenery from weak eyes and indolent dispositions. Blinds क्या होते हैं? जो पर्दे लगाए होते हैं, कवर्स लगाए होते हैं, ओके, उसके बारे में बात कर रहा है. The bookworm wraps himself up in his web of verbal generalities and sees only the glimmering shadows of things reflected from the minds of others. So his thoughts, what he means, his thoughts are not his thoughts. His thoughts are whatever he has read. Nature puts him out. So nature doesn't understand such kind of people. The impressions of real objects, striped of disguises of words and voluminous roundabout descriptions, are blows that stagger him. Their variety distracts, their rapidity exhausts him, and he turns from the bustle, the noise and glare and whirling motion of the world about him to the quiet monotony of the dead languages and the less startling and more intelligible combinations of the letters of the alphabet. So, a very complicated language he has used. But आप क्या कोशिश कीजिए, जो भाव है, जो मीनिंग है, या जो आइडियाज Hazlitt is trying to share with you through these essays. Remember this thing, he is talking against, or he is making fun, or he is presenting the foolishness of people who believes in bookish knowledge in a very amusing way, or you can say in a very clever way. बड़ी clever तरीके से वो उनकी कमियों को बाहर ला रहे हैं कि वो लाइफ की क्या क्या चीजें हैं जो मिस करते हैं. दैट इज व्हाट ही हैज टॉक्ड अबाउट टिल हियर ऑल्सो. ओके, सो डू नॉट गेट कंफ्यूज्ड विद द लैंग्वेज, जस्ट ट्राई टू अंडरस्टैंड द इंपॉर्टेंट थिंग्स दैट आई एम टेलिंग यू अबाउट द एसे. It is well, it is perfectly well. Leave me to my repose is the motto of the sleeping and the dead. You might as well ask the paralytic to leap from his chair and throw away his crutch, or without a miracle to take up his bed and walk, as expect the learned teacher to throw down his book and think for himself. So he says a paralytic person may still make an effort to, use his he may try to walk, or he may try to get up from his chair and sit on the bed, but a person who is bookworm will never leave his books. किताबें नहीं छोड़ेगा जो किताबी कीड़ा है ना, और अपने लिए वो कोई अपने उसके न्यू आइडियाज नहीं आएंगे, उसके माइंड में वही आइडियाज रहेंगे विच ही हैज लर्नड फ्रॉम द बुक्स. ओके, 4 डॉट्स का मतलब हो गया कुछ हिस्सा यहाँ पे लीव कर दिया है राइटर ने. He can only breathe a learned atmosphere as other men breathe common air. अब वो common sense पे आएंगे, है ना. He is a borrower of sense. Sense भी borrow करी है, he says. He has no ideas of his own and must live on those of other people. Who are the other people? Other people कौन है यहाँ पे? जिनकी books वो पढ़ते हैं. The habit of supplying our ideas from foreign sources enfeebles our internal strength of thought. Internal strength क्यों की कमी क्यों है? Because enfeeble होता है weak करना. क्यों weak होता है? Because the new thoughts don't come. वही thoughts जो पढ़े हैं किसी की book में, किसी writer के, he uses that only. And course of dram drinking destroys the tone of the stomach. Example लिया है again. Now the faculties of mind when not exerted. जब आप mind को use नहीं करोगे ना, आप सिर्फ thoughts या ideas लेते रहोगे जो आप पढ़ रहे हो उससे, लेकिन अपने ideas thoughts नहीं आएंगे तो mind को क्या हो जाएगा? The faculty of mind will become useless. When cramped by custom and authority, become listless, torpid, and unfit for the purposes of thought or action. तो mind को use करना बहुत जरूरी है, लेकिन जो people bookworms हैं, ऐसे learned जिनकी bookish knowledge ज्यादा है, for them, their faculties of mind have become very weak. Can we wonder at the languor and lassitude which is thus produced by life of the learned, sloth and ignorance, by poring over lines and syllables that excite little more idea or interest than if they were characters of an unknown tongue? दूसरी language के works पढ़ के they are gaining knowledge, but then that knowledge is of no use. Till the eyes close on vacancy and book drops from the feeble hand. I would rather be a woodcutter or the meanest hind that all day sweats in the eye of the Phoebus and at night sleeps in Elysium than wear out my life so twixt dreaming and awake. The learned author differs from the learned student in this, that one transcribes what the other transcribes, one understands. The learned are more literary drudges. If you set them upon original compositions, their heads turn. They don't know where they are. Originality नहीं होती है learned people में. The indefatigable readers of books are like everlasting copiers of pictures who, when they attempt to do anything of their own, find they want an eye quick enough and hand steady enough and colors bright enough to trace the living form of nature. So no originality is there. Works of such people, such learned people, they remain unreal. Anyone who has passed through the regular gradations of a classical education and is not made a fool by it may consider himself as having had a very narrow escape. It is an old remark that boys who shine at school do not make the greatest figure when they grow up and come out into the world. Generally, we have seen that people scoring 98%, 96% are left out in competitive exams, whereas people who scored 45 to 50% to 60%, they go further in competitive exams. तो बड़ी अच्छी एक logical example लेते हुए यहाँ पे Hazlitt is explaining you this. The things, in fact, which a boy is set to learn at school and on which his success depends are things which do not require exercise, either of the highest or the most useful faculties of mind, that is your brain. Memory is the chief faculty called into play in conning over and repeating lessons by rote, ratta maar ke, in grammar, in language, in geography, arithmetic, etc. So that he who has the most of this technical memory with the least turn of other things which have a stronger and more natural claim upon his childish attention will make the most forward schoolboy. Now, a schoolboy who is using his creative faculties, अपने mind को use कर रहा है, अपनी memory को use कर रहा है, that schoolboy will make a successful person. A lad with a sickly constitution, कंडीशनिंग, उसकी घर की कंडीशनिंग, उसको क्या सिखाया गया है, बुक्स पढ़नी सिखाई गई हैं, एंड नो वेरी एक्टिव माइंड हु कैन जस्ट रिटेन व्हाट इज पॉइंटेड आउट टू हिम and has neither sagacity to distinguish nor spirit to enjoy for himself will generally be at the head of his form. Now, one who is a bookworm, he will not turn out to be that successful, because knowledge या पढ़ाई या learning is not just about gaining knowledge. तभी वो कह रहा है, Hazlitt is also focusing on this fact that your grades, your percentage, your bookish knowledge is not what makes you successful. What makes you successful is how you use your brain and memory. There is indeed a degree of stupidity which prevents children from learning the usual lessons or ever arriving at these puny academic honors. Puny academic honors, जो awards मिलते हैं, prizes मिलते हैं, academic prizes especially. But what passes for stupidity is much oftener a want of interest, of a sufficient motive to fix the attention and force a reluctant application of the dry and unmeaning pursuits of school learning. The best capacities are as such above this drudgery, dullness, as the dullest are beneath it. Our men of greatest genius have not been most distinguished for their acquirements at school or at the university. So people who have really written great works, they may not be very good in the school or in the university, और ऐसा भी हो सकता है कि वो लोग स्कूल या यूनिवर्सिटी गए ही नहीं हो. He gives you a very good example towards the end of the essay. The enthusiast fancy was a truant ever. Such persons do not think so highly of the advantages, nor can they submit their imaginations so servilely to the trammels of strict scholastic discipline. There is a certain kind and degree of intellect in which words take root, but into which things have not the power to penetrate. A mediocrity of talent, a person who is not very intelligent and not very intelligent, okay, two levels, उसके बीच के जो people होते हैं, students होते हैं या learned होते हैं, with a certain slenderness of moral constitution, is the soil that produces the most brilliant specimens of successful prize essays. So he says people who use their talent, who use their mind, who use their brains, such people are successful people. It should not be forgotten that least respectable character among modern politicians was the cleverest boy at Eton. Learning is the knowledge of that which is not generally known to others and which we can only derive at second hand from books or other artificial sources. तो अब नई एक स्टेटमेंट जो उन्होंने दी है, एंड व्हाट इज दैट लर्निंग फॉर पीपल हु जस्ट लर्न फ्रॉम बुक्स, उनके लिए नॉलेज क्या है? इट इज सेकेंड हैंड लर्निंग, इट इज सेकेंड हैंड नॉलेज. ये याद रखने की बात है आपको. The knowledge of that which is before us or about us, which appeals to our experience, passions, and pursuits, to the bosom and businesses of men, is not learning. Learning is the knowledge of that which none but the learned know. He is the most learned man who knows the most of what is farthest removed from common life and actual observation, that is of least practical utility and least liable to be brought to test of experience, and that having been handed down through the greatest number of intermediate stages, various stages, is the most full of uncertainty, difficulties and contradictions. It is seeing with the eyes of others, hearing with the eyes or ears, and pinning our faith on their understanding. What it यहाँ है, the learned people who learn through bookish knowledge. Without books, they cannot think on their own. They do not have ideas of their own. What they are doing, they are seeing through the eyes of the book authors, writers. They are hearing through their ears, and they are putting their faith in their understanding, in their thoughts, in their notions. The learned man prides himself in the knowledge of names, dates, not of men or things. He thinks and cares nothing about his next door neighbor. तो जो bookish जो bookworms हैं उन्हें नहीं पता कि who is their next door neighbor. They do not enjoy the realities of life. They do not experience life basically, है ना? He does not know whether his oldest acquaintance जिनको आप पहले से जानते हो, जान पहचान की, जानकीर जिसको हम बोलते हैं, is a naive or a fool, but he can pronounce a pompous lecture on all the principal characters in history. तो उसे ये नहीं पता कि next door neighbor कौन है मेरा, या मेरे पुराने जान के कोई जिन्हें मैं जानता हूँ, that person is there, but they can give a long lecture on people from the history books. He cannot tell whether an object is black or white or round or square, and yet he is professed master of the laws of optics and rules of perspective. All bookish knowledge is useless, he says. He knows as much of what he talks about as a blind man does of colors. तो जितना blind man को colors के बारे में पता है ना, Hazlitt is saying उतना ही एक learned man को life के बारे में पता है. He cannot give a satisfactory answer to the plainest question. अब ये ना बड़ी ऐसी एक बात है जिसे अगर मैं एक आपको एग्जांपल दूं. We have seen the movie 3 Idiots and he had asked आमिर खान a question, what is a machine? तो जो आमिर खान का आंसर था that was not right because उन्होंने रट्टा नहीं मारा था उस definition of machine का. But the other guy, the other student जिसने की machine की पूरी definition को रट्टा मारा था, according to the professor, according to the teacher, उसने बिल्कुल absolute answer दिया है. So this difference is what Hazlitt trying to tell you. The knowledge, the understanding which can simply explain कि machine क्या होती है, that is more important than the definition which are given in the books. एक example लेके मैंने आपको ये बात समझाई है, शायद अब आप बेहतर समझ पाए. Nor is he ever in the right in any one of his opinions upon any matter of fact that really comes before him. And yet he gives himself out for an infallible judge on all those points of which it is impossible that he or any other person living should know anything but by conjecture. He is expert in all the dead and in most of the living languages, but he can neither speak his own fluently nor write it correctly. ये एक और बड़ी satirical चीज बड़ी cleverly उन्होंने सामने लाई है कि अपनी भाषा तो ना बोली जाती है, अच्छे से ना लिखी जाती है, दूसरी भाषाओं की बुक्स पढ़ के they tell them that oh we are the geniuses, we are so big learned people. A mere scholar who knows nothing but books must be ignorant even of them. Books do not teach the use of books. Books ये नहीं सिखाती कि books को कैसे use करते हैं. How should he know anything of a work who knows nothing of the subject? Subject के बारे में ही नहीं पता जिसे, उसे work के बारे में क्या पता होगा? The learned is conversant with books, that they are made of books, and those again of others without end. He parrots those who have parroted others. Parrot यहाँ पे तोते के लिए यूज किया जा रहा है ना, कि जो रट्टा मार के ये रिपीट करके कॉपी करके बुक राइटर ने सीखा. The same thing now the reader is parroting, the reader is copying. That is what it means. He can translate the same word into 10 different languages, but he knows nothing of the thing which it means in any one of them. He stuffs his head with authorities built on authorities, quotations upon quotations, which locks his senses, his understanding and his heart. एक individual thought, एक individual purview जो होता है, that person, one who is totally dependent on books doesn't know anything. He is unacquainted with the maxims, rules होते हैं, and manners of the world. He is to seek in the characters of individuals. He sees no beauty in the face of nature or of heart. To him, the mighty world of eye and ear is hid, and knowledge, except at one entrance, quite shut out. His pride takes part of his ignorance, and his self-importance rises with the number of things of which he does not know the value, and which he therefore despises as unworthy of his notice. So he doesn't take notice of commonplace things. Rather, Hazlitt is saying that he is ignorant about all these things, but he is very proud of whatever knowledge he has taken from where? Taken from books. The language of nature, of art, is one of the most he does not understand. तो ये ignorance है learned का. क्या ignorance है? That he doesn't know the language of nature or language of art. He doesn't know about music. He knows not touch of it, from the strains of all accomplished Mozart, king of music, to the shepherd's pipe upon the mountain. His ears are nailed to his books and deadened with the sound of Greek and Latin tongues and the din and smithery of school learning. So person जो bookish knowledge लेता है ना, उसको music, art, nature के बारे में कुछ नहीं पता होता, ना उसको उससे कोई मतलब होता है. Does he know anything more of poetry? He knows the number of a feet in a verse. ये पोएम के बारे में बात हो रही है. And of acts in a play, but of the soul or spirit he knows nothing. उसे ये जरूर पता होगा कि उसमें कितने acts हैं, कितने प्ले में कितने एक्ट्स हैं, या राइम पोएम में कितनी फीट है, कितने मीटर्स हैं, बट ही डजंट नो व्हाट द आइडिया इज बिहाइंड इट, व्हाट द पोएट इज ट्राइंग टू टेल, और व्हाट द ड्रामेटिस्ट इज ट्राइंग टू टेल. He knows no liberal or mechanic art, no trade or occupation, no game of skill or chance. Learning has no skill in surgery, in agriculture, in building, or in working in wood or in iron. It cannot make any instrument of labor or use it when made. It cannot handle the plow or the spade or the chisel or the hammer. It knows nothing of hunting or hawking, fishing or shooting, of horse or dogs, of fencing or dancing or cudgel playing और बाउल्स और कार्ड्स और टेनिस और एनीथिंग. तो जितनी भी एंटरटेनमेंट भरी चीजें हैं ना, a person who is a bookworm, or let us say a person who thinks of himself as a learned, he is ignorant about all these recreation बोलते हैं हम इसको, है ना, जो चीजें हमारे को रिफ्रेश करती हैं. He is all ignorant about these recreations of life. The learned professors of all arts sciences cannot reduce any one of them to practice, though he may contribute an account of them to an encyclopedia. He has not the use of his hands or his feet. He can neither run nor walk nor swim, and he considers all those who actually understand and can exercise any of these arts of body or mind as vulgar and mechanical men, though to know almost any one of them in perfection requires long time and practice, with powers originally fitted and a turn of mind particularly devoted to them. It does not require more than this to enable the learned candidate to arrive by painful study at a doctor's degree or a fellowship, and to eat, drink and sleep the rest of his life. So mere degrees and mere bookish knowledge doesn't help, he says. Now the thing is plain. And what is the plain thing? All that men really understand is confined to a very small compass. उनका जो thinking है, उनका knowledge है, that is very meager, very small, to their daily affairs and experiences, to what they have an opportunity to know, and motives to study or practice. The rest is affectation and imposture. The common people, now this is what he is coming to. अभी तक अगर आपको कुछ नहीं समझ आ रहा हो, कहाँ तक पता था, क्लियर हुआ हमारे को, that he says learned people को म्यूजिक, आर्ट और नेचर के बारे में कुछ नहीं पता. नाउ ही इज कमिंग टू द थिंग दैट लर्नेड पीपल से ज्यादा किसको पता है? कॉमन पीपल को पता है. ही सेज हैव द स्किल ऑफ यूजिंग देयर लिम्स फॉर देयर लाइफ, for they live by their labor or skill. They understand their own business and the characters of those they have to deal with. For it is necessary that they have eloquence बोलने का तरीका, बातचीत करने का तरीका, to express their passions, and wit at will to express their contempt and provoke laughter. तो ऐसी चीजें जो है ना, वो सिर्फ कॉमन पीपल कर सकते हैं. he says learned people को ऐसा कुछ भी नहीं आता. learned people are ignorant about such thing. तभी टाइटल है ना ऑन द इग्नोरेंस ऑफ लर्नेड. अब लर्नेड है कोई, प्रोफेसर है कोई, या बहुत वेल एजुकेटेड है, अब उसको इग्नोरेंट कैसे बोल सकते हो? ये जो सारे पैरामीटर्स हैजलिट ने उठाए हैं ना, उनके बेसिस पे ही इज कॉलिंग देम इग्नोरेंट. You will hear more good things on the outside of a stagecoach from London to Oxford than if you were to pass a 12-month with the undergraduates or heads of colleges of that famous university. And more home truths are to be learned from listening to a noisy debate in an ale house, ale where people drink, than from attending to a formal one in the House of Commons. तो इस where people drink, वहां ज्यादा अच्छी बातें की जाती हैं as compared to the House of Commons. House of Commons जहां पे सारे के सारे बड़े बड़े लर्नेड्स जाके अपने व्यूज प्रेजेंट करते हैं. An elderly country gentlewoman will often know more of character and be able to illustrate it by more amusing anecdotes, stories, kisse kahaniyan taken from the history of what has been said, done and gossiped in a country town from the last 50 years than the best blue stocking of the age will be able to glean from the sort of life which consists in an acquaintance with all the novels and satirical poems published in the same period. So is a country की कोई woman है, she can tell you better about all these things about the history of the country better than what a learned man can tell you. People in towns indeed are woefully deficient in knowledge of character, which they see only in the bust, not as a whole length. People in the country not only know all that has happened to a man, but trace his virtues, vices, as they do his features in their descent through several generations, and solve some contradiction in his behavior by a cross in the breed half a century ago. The learned know nothing of the matter. उन्हें अपने टाउन की हिस्ट्री, अपनी कंट्री की हिस्ट्री, अपने विलेज की हिस्ट्री के बारे में कुछ नहीं पता, लेकिन बुक में जितनी भी हिस्ट्रीज हैं, they know everything about it. Above all, the mass of society have common sense, which the learned in all ages want. तो अब क्या कह रहे हैं वो? That the learned people are devoid of what? They are devoid of common sense. Okay? Such is the use which has been made of human learning. The laborers in this vineyard seem as if it was their object to confound all common sense. Vineyard, wine होती है बेलें, है ना, बेल जो लगती है ना, उसको वाइन बोलते हैं. By evils, where I missed it. Their object to confound all common sense and the distinctions of good and evil by means of traditional maxims and preconceived notions taken upon trust, and increasing in absurdity and increase of age. They pile hypothesis on hypothesis, mountain high, एक के बाद hypothesis देंगे, till it is impossible to come to plain truth on any question. They are never able to resolve certain things. To conclude this subject, the most they see things not as they are, but as they find them in books, and wink and shut their apprehension up. Apprehension होते हैं doubt, wink करना होता है आंख मारना. ओके, आंख मारना. अब यहाँ पे आंख मारने का मतलब आंख मारने के लिए नहीं यूज हो रहा है, बट वो चुपचाप, मतलब दे टेक इट फॉर ग्रांटेड कि हाँ बुक में ये लिखा है, तो दिस वुड बी द राइट support to something. To conclude, the most sensible people to be met with in society are men of business and of the world, who argue from what they see and know instead of spinning cobweb distinctions of what things ought to be. So सबसे पहले इन्होंने sensible किसको बोला? Men of business and of the world. Sensible कौन नहीं है? Learned people sensible नहीं है. उसके बाद किसको sensible बुला रहा है? Women को. They have more of what we call good sense than men. They have fewer pretensions, doubts, are less implicated in theories, ज़्यादा सोचते नहीं हैं, and judge objects more from their immediate and involuntary impression on the mind, and therefore more truly and naturally. They cannot reason wrong, for they do not reason at all. Reason लगाते ही नहीं है. They do not involve into contradictions. They do not think or speak by rule, and they have in general more eloquence and wit, as well as sense on that account. By their wit, sense and eloquence together, they generally contrive to govern their husbands. तो एक मजाक उड़ाते हुए एक amusing way में they are saying कि इन तीनों हथियारों को यूज करके, कौन से तीन हथियार, कौन सी तीन चीजें, विट, सेंस एंड एलोक्वेंस, women क्या करती हैं? They control their husbands, govern their husband. Their style when they write to their friends is better than that of most authors. अब कितने हो गए? थर्ड. Wait. Men of business and of the world 1, women 2. थर्ड किनको बोल रहा है? Uneducated people have most exuberance of invention and greatest freedom from prejudice. अब आपको ये जान के बहुत shocking लगेगा that Shakespeare was one person who did not had a formal schooling, yet he is known as one of the most celebrated यूनिवर्सल राइटर उनको बोला जाता है, यूनिवर्सल ड्रामेटिस्ट उनको बोला जाता है, बिकॉज नो वन हैज बीन एबल टू मैच अप टू हिज व्हाट, to his works. No one has been able to match up to his level, and it is very strange that he did not had any formal education. Shakespeare was evidently an uneducated mind, both in the freshness of his imagination and the variety of his views. As Milton's was scholastic in texture, both of his thoughts and feelings. Shakespeare had not been accustomed to write themes at school in favor of virtue or against vices. उन्होंने स्कूलों में जाके नहीं सीखा था कि ऐसे कैसे लिखना है, पैराग्राफ कैसे लिखना है. To this we owe the unaffected but healthy tone of his dramatic morality. If we wish to know the force of human genius, we should speak about Shakespeare. If we wish to see the insignificance of human learning, we may only study his commentators. तो जिन लोगों ने, या जो लोग शेक्सपियर के कमेंटेटर्स हैं, जिन्होंने शेक्सपियर के ऊपर कमेंट्री दी है, उसके ऊपर क्रिटिसिज्म दिया है कि शेक्सपियर ने ऐसा लिखा, ऐसा लिखा, ये लिखा, वो ऐसा बेहतर लिख सकते थे, तो इसे अगर आपको क्या करना है, अगर आपको ह्यूमन जीनियस के बारे में जानना है तो रीड शेक्सपियर. लेकिन आपको इनसिग्निफिकेंस ऑफ ह्यूमन लर्निंग के बारे में जानना है तो रीड हिज कमेंटेटर्स. तो कुछ बातें हैं जो आप ध्यान रखेंगे. सबसे पहले विच Hazlitt is saying, सबसे पहले तो you will remember that this essay is written in a satirical tone, where क्या कर रहे हैं, Hazlitt is talking about how the learned people are ignorant. Okay, he says कि they lack a kind of common sense. These learned people, they have only bookish knowledge. And then he gives you various examples of people who go to school, what they learn, and who is better, a person who is getting good percentages in the school, or person who is studying in a person who is mediocre, because उसकी knowledge जो है, या उसने अगर कोई ऐसे लिखा या कुछ भी लिखा for that matter, it has not come from books. वो कहाँ से आया है? It has come from the use of his brain. And Hazlitt ने starting में बात करी है that what has to be used? Memory, brain, mind has to be used for what? For exercising the mind. That is very important. After that, he talks about why or how, a country person, a person who lives in a country, he knows more than कंट्री. यहाँ पे ना बेटा रूरल एरियाज को बोला जा रहा है. ओके, रिमेंबर दिस कंट्री उस कनेक्शन में यूज किया गया है कि जो कंट्री के लोग हैं या जो कॉमन पीपल हैं, रूरल प्लेसेस के पीपल हैं, उन्हें अपनी हिस्ट्री के बारे में पता होगा. लेकिन जो लर्नेड पीपल हैं, दे वुड नो द हिस्ट्री ऑफ अदर प्लेसेस बट दे डू नॉट नो द हिस्ट्री ऑफ देयर प्लेस. ये डिफरेंस उन्होंने बताया है. देन ही सेज दैट these learned people, they are ignorant of nature, art, even music. They have no idea about it. And after that, he also tells you, before I come to this conclusion, yeah, ये वाला पोर्शन जो आता है जहां वो रिक्रिएशन के बारे में बात कर रहा है, ना वो फिशिंग जाते हैं ना शूटिंग जाते हैं, दे डोंट गो हंटिंग, दे डोंट प्ले आउट, दे डू नॉट डांस, दे डू नॉट सिंग, ऑल दीज थिंग्स ही हैज टेकन अप. ओके, एंड फाइनली व्हेन ही कंक्लूड्स, तीन categories he picks up. And what are those categories? He says men of business and of world. सेकेंड बोल रहे हैं women, and थर्ड कौन है? uneducated people. ये लोग कौन है? According to Hazlitt, they are the truly learned people, because whatever they know it through the use of the faculties of mind. उनकी जो knowledge है या उनकी जो use of faculties of mind, उनकी जो knowledge है या thinking है या उनके जो अपने व्यूज हैं, दैट आर देयर ओन. वो व्यूज या थिंकिंग या नोशंस उनकी दूसरों की बुक्स पढ़ के नहीं बनी है. सो दिस इज व्हाट Hazlitt is talking about in this essay. आप इसको, लैंग्वेज इसकी थोड़ी complicated है. Do not get confused with that. You focus on those areas which obviously I will be sharing the handout. उन्हीं points के ऊपर आपने focus करना है और उन्हें ध्यान रखना है आपने. ठीक है? So with that, the essay is over. In case any doubt arises, you may ask for any queries or any doubts. And obviously I know you will not read it once again, लेकिन जो मैं आपको handout share करूंगी उसे या तो note कर लीजिएगा, और obviously note तो आपको करना ही पड़ेगा, है ना. Read that once again, the handout, and फिर भी कोई queries हैं, कोई doubts हैं, you are always open to ask. Okay, that's all about the essay on the ignorance of the learned. थोड़ा टाइटल पे ही फोकस करोगे ना तो जो पॉइंट्स हैं वो बहुत अच्छे से समझ आ जाएंगे. राइट, दैट्स ऑल. थैंक यू.